Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Swaim Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today, we're going to talk about belonging, which I think is an important topic right now. We are very excited for our next guest. Rhodes Perry is a two-time best-selling author, sought-after keynote, and an award-winning social entrepreneur. Nationally recognized as a belonging culture strategist, LGBTQ thought leader. He has decades of leadership development experience with a distinguished career in public service, having worked at the White House, the Department of Justice, and PFLAG National. He serves as the CEO of Rhodes Perry Consulting, a national leadership development and change management consulting firm, helping organizational and people leaders build psychological safety, trust, and belonging at work. The firm specializes in somatic executive coaching, leadership development programming, and belonging cultural consulting. Rhodes also hosts the Belonging Practice, a monthly gathering for leaders to practice somatics to build resilience and capacity to navigate these challenging times. His books include Belonging at Work and Imagine Belonging, and he's about to publish a new memoir and methodology book, Roads Less Traveled. Rhodes, welcome to the show. Yeah. We're so glad that you're here.
I am super excited to be here. It's good to be with you both.
Best title. I love that title so much. So good.
Thank you.
Well, I feel like belonging is an important and hard conversation right now. And I feel like in the work that we do with fundraising events, we're always looking to those moments where people feel more connected and feel more invested and feel that like magic sense of this is something I want to be a part of. But I feel like we're also in a national dialogue where things like DEI are under attack.
Yes.
So in the middle of this culture war, how are you doing?
I love that question. Thank you for kind of grounding our conversation in that. I'm kind of a both and of heartbroken and really feeling a sense of being resolute, right?
Yeah.
And really giving space for what is and trying to build more capacity in my own body to hold it all. And at the same time, trying to answer the question of who do I need to become to show up in this moment. So to be able to share what I can, if it's helpful for people just to ground in the moment and be with what is. And to be okay with not knowing what to do, and to sit with the questions, because I think there's nothing more powerful than a question, because we may not have the answers to it, but the question itself provokes new thoughts. And I think to be with those questions alone can feel a lot. To be together and to kind of share kind of our thinking together, like there's power in that. And I know that you all create spaces to do just that. So I'm just excited to be here, and hopefully we'll have some new thoughts by the end of our conversation.
I love it. Well, we were honored to be a guest on your podcast, but that was so long ago, and the world is so different now. So when we were plotting out this season, we felt like there was probably no topic that was more important to talk about, because it's that sense of where do we all fit in right now? How do we all fit together, come together? So we're really glad you're here.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for the invitation.
We were talking a couple of days ago in advance of the podcast, and you very specifically noted, and I nodded emphatically, that these are not usual times, that there is no roadmap right now. And I think that's causing a lot of fallout. And a lot of us are looking for something to hold on to. And so my wonder is what tools you're using right now.
Yeah. I just want to appreciate, it does feel like that there's a trapdoor and we're kind of falling through it, and we haven't yet kind of found the ground. And Sam, you had mentioned somatics, right? And somatics to me has been both life-saving, to be introduced to this practice a few years ago as I was kind of recovering from burnout. And recognizing that to me is not just kind of a lifeline for myself, but to share that with other people. And so that's a practice. I don't know if it's necessarily a tool, but to introduce it to folks who might not be familiar with what somatics is, it's a Greek word. Soma means the body, and it's really using the body's wisdom and kind of tracking what the experience is in your body, to assess where you're at in any given moment, and to use that information as a compass, right? Like, none of us can predict the future, right? But there's an intuition that if we listen, and we can kind of track where it is, it can kind of guide us to what the next move can be. And I find that to be not only helpful for myself, but to be able to kind of share this practice with leaders, right? Where you all know this, like, all eyes are on you at any given time, especially when something goes sideways and it's like,
Right.
oh, what's Kristen going to do? And like, you, in those moments, you may not know, right? And so to find ground, to find center, to kind of sense, oh, there's excitement of being in this interview, but maybe a little bit of anxiety. What do I do with that? And that noticing through practice can create the opportunity of being more choiceful in moments, right? Rather than kind of react our ways through life, which, if we're kind of numbed out, that's kind of like a lower state of being, right? But if we can kind of track where we are, what we're feeling, be with it, not try to kind of push it away, we have more capacity for choice. And I find that to be really helpful. More choices are good in moments of lots of questions.
I have lots of questions now.
Yeah.
More capacity for choice. I just want to underline that about 10 times. Go on.
Well, because we're talking about a lot of things in the practice of somatics as a leader. So many of our listeners are leaders in nonprofit organizations, and I think leadership is hard and often very solo. Our leaders are frequently trying to make decisions alone, or they're trying to, in a nonprofit setting, often manage up and down because they're managing to a board and to a staff, and are trying to be really thoughtful about things like avoiding burnout and thoughtful about the fact that there's so much need around their mission and that there's always going to be more work to do around their mission.
Yeah.
That when you start to talk about somatics as a practice, it feels to me like it opens this sort of question box for me about the risk of not, right? You're asking people, you're not asking people, but somatics is asking of people to be a little more in their body, a little more aware, listening, feeling. Feeling can be scary. So what's the implication if you don't? If you're always pushing that to the side,
Yeah.
because you have to show up as the leader, which I hear all the time, and certainly have felt that sense of imposter syndrome, or that sense of there's an expectation.
Yeah.
What's the risk of not taking the time?
Yeah. I think the cost, right? The cost of not being with what is. Just to note, it could be hard to drop into the body and to fully feel, right? It could kick up capital T trauma, right? So having support, and doing this work is really, really key. So I just want to put that out first and foremost. Not going there, though, right? Like I was talking about numbing out, right? Not really kind of operating from the neck up of I think, therefore I am. I can think my way out of this situation. Well, we're in a situation where there's so many questions, and the thoughts that we might have, or the old ways of thinking about leading through these moments aren't sufficient, right? So so there are limitations to this amazing brain that we have. And the brain is within the domain of our body, right? So if we have access to more of the wisdom here, again, it's kind of that compass. And so, and it's the ability to have that capacity for more choice. So if we limit just operating, if we limit ourselves just to using our brain, right, to think through these moments, we've limited that capacity for choice, right? We can't even go there. And so there's there's some dangers, you know, and we're also playing smaller. We're not using the full magic of this human experience of being in the body, and to fully feel through the hard times, right? But we can also feel through the joy, right? That can even be here in these moments, right? And I think for me that joy, like unapologetic joy, even when things are challenging, is some medicine right now, I think, at least for me.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we've been looking for that joy. We've been focusing on the sort of, where do we find the bright spots? Where do we find the helpers? Where do we find a sense of raising the vibe? Because I think that so often the tool of oppression is to numb, to feel scared, and to like shove down all of the sort of sense of anything you could do to impact it. But you're working with leaders, we're frequently working with leaders. If we're talking about folks that are in a role where they need to show up to support communities, support each other, support their employees, I feel like the work that has to be done right now is, how do we raise the vibe? How do we create those connections? How do we not go numb to it, so that we can actually manifest and work on the world we all want to live in?
Yeah.
Well, and too, what I love what you're talking about is, I think often, specifically in workspaces, we're asked to divest from an emotional self, right? That's used against us, that's seen as not relevant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so sort of that finding a way to create an integration that amplifies the whole self becomes a really powerful space to occupy. So I'm just kind of thinking about that. Can you talk to us about your book, Imagine Belonging?
Yeah. Oops. Yes. Imagine Belonging was both kind of analysis of what we were talking about, like structural oppression. And it's also a space to do exactly what you were sharing, Sam, of being clear about the direction that we're going towards, the world that we really want to build. And, you know, it's a business book, so it's written for leaders, to be clear of leaders like the idea of belonging, usually in my experience, because they started their company, you know, they're the head of the organization, they feel a strong sense of belonging. So it feels like a topic that they want to wrap their arms around. And for them to get really clear of, you know, one, just answering the question, do you have a sense that other people have that strong sense, as strong of a sense of belonging as you do? And usually that opens up a really good dialogue, right?
I can imagine.
Yes.
Can of worms.
Can of worms, right? And then, but it, you know, and it's talking about the things that might get in the way for those who are least likely to feel it. Like what might be different, you know, what could be a sensory experience of your culture 10 years from now that might be able to resolve some of those barriers for other people to experience it. And it's setting a very clear target of where you're moving towards, rather than, before I wrote that book, one of my frustrations was, you know, people wanting quick fixes, or some, you know, being able to check a box of like, oh, we did that training and now we feel more connection and yay, you know, back to work. And it's just kind of, it's being more intentional about, what is it all for the sake of what? Like, yes, this is fun to work with you, you know, and you're making an investment. You're making a pretty big investment. Like, what is it for, and how does it lead to the kind of culture that might not be taking place now, but you have potential for it? So that was the purpose of that book. And really that was a complement to Belonging at Work, which was really just, why should we care about this? What does it mean? Why does it matter? How do we actually start to create this? So it was a nice complementary book for leaders to be really clear of, now that you get why this really matters, like, you know, where are we going? Where are we going together? Yeah.
I'm realizing maybe we should take a half step back.
Sure. Yeah.
How would you define belonging?
Yes. Okay. Well, I think that's a great question because the three of us could probably come up with very
Yes.
subjective definitions.
Yes.
So I want to say, yes, there is a subjective definition of belonging,
Yes.
and there are some objective traits to it. And a lot of this comes from social science research. I love John Powell, right, from the Othering and Belonging Institute, who writes a lot about this, from an academic perspective. And so I tried to distill that very practically into the workplace. So 4 ingredients, right? Being seen, being valued for who you are, expertise, lived experience, like how you're showing up in the workplace, you're a value add. And because you're here, you're co-creating this culture with us. You're not just fitting into it. Second piece is connection, right? So, can I trust you all to have my back and vice versa? Like, how do we create this kind of trust together to be collaborative? Third is support, right? Kind of getting what I need to do my best work and giving you all what I can when I can to support your success. So there's like team care. And this last piece is like pride, right? It's like pride in not only like the contributions that I'm making, but the pride of how those contributions allow the team to succeed or allow the organization to achieve success. And I find like using those 4 ingredients can be really helpful of like, where is that showing up? Like for you as an individual, for the team as a collective, and to evaluate that across like a bigger enterprise. And it gives me a lot of confidence. We can base this in like social science, right? There's a there to it instead of using one person's definition of belonging is inclusion or it's equity. It's like, well, it's an emotional outcome. That's the way I describe it. It's like, it's that elusive feeling that we want everyone to experience. And, most of the time that's not taking place. It's something to aspire towards. And there has to be a foundation at base of psychological safety, meaning you could take interpersonal risks without fear of negative consequences. Like, I can ask for help. I made a mistake, I've got some constructive feedback. I'm not going to lose my job if I'm exercising.
Right.
And then there also has to be trust, right? And trust for leaders, right? Like we know we have to extend the trust in order to be trusted. And that could be hard, especially if you have trust issues,
Yeah.
So, there's that.
So I want to know, can you repeat the 4 ingredients again?
Yeah. So being seen, connected, supported, and having a sense of pride.
So I think the impact of that, so seen, connected, supported, sense of pride, has a ripple effect. So you're talking specifically about the workplace, but I think we see this in all structures, right? We see this within friend groups and family structures. We see this in workplaces. I think in the fundraising world, we're often looking at nonprofit sector where an organization often has program staff that is in direct service to a base of clients, and the administrative staff that is often in direct service to a leadership board and donor base.
Yeah.
And all of these things, I think, create a sum that is greater than 1 and 1 equals 2, right? That when we have a sense of belonging together, we then can expand that to create a sense of belonging for others. And in fundraising world, we see that when people have that sense of belonging, that emotional outcome, that psychological safety, they're willing oftentimes as a donor or a volunteer to invest more of their time, more of their energy, more of their money, more of their resources. And I feel like the nonprofit sector is a really powerful sector in that way, and that we're willing to oftentimes bring people in that are not inherently part of our organization and say, no, you are a part of our organization, right? Donor, you are. Volunteer, you are a key critical piece of the organization.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've been really examining belonging, that connection, the psychological safety, because we think it's a way to have like exponential impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was kind of looking at some of the interview questions before the interview. Thank you. And on some of those tactics, right? Like I was thinking, like how do you build trust, knowing who your audience is?
Yeah.
And I think that's the piece of like the acknowledgement of, particularly if a donor has given before, of like, wow, like because of that donation, like here's what we were able to do. And that sounds really basic. And sometimes that's missed, like I go to a lot of community events and I love when they do it because it's like, whoa, like you were able to have that impact because of like these small donations. And, like it inspires me. Maybe I'll give a little more and see what else happens. Right.
Uh-huh.
But there's a trust that I think is built, right? Because of that, maybe there's transparency to how, right? But like, yeah, there are like many different ecosystems within just a nonprofit organization, as you described. And I think of this visual of kind of like circles, there's 3 circles. One circle is like what exclusion looks like. So there's a couple people in the middle, like a couple of dots in the middle and dots of different colors on the outside.
Uh-huh.
And then inclusion, right, is one circle and everybody's kind of together, right? And then belonging is like all of these dots kind of create like multiple circles on top of each other. And the picture is more powerful than these words, right? And when I look at that image of belonging, it is that kind of co-creation. So thinking about all of those ecosystems within the nonprofit, like, when people do have agency within whatever their roles are, the power of what that can become, like that is truly co-creation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of an abstract example, but sometimes it helps people recognize like this topic isn't about like the fitting in kind of piece that I know I was raised with. It really is kind of a value add, and that's a big leap. I know when I'm coaching leaders to kind of grasp that of like, and that is extending trust to those that you might be leading of what they can contribute and giving them space to add that value without the micromanagement that sometimes can happen.
Yeah, I feel like micromanagement is an easy default to slide into.
Yeah.
And it's harder to move into the place of co-creation.
Yeah. And I would say especially in these times because things feel out of control. And so with micromanaging, it's like, oh, let's retract.
Right.
Let's kind of protect. And, and there's some cost to that, right? There's some costs.
Yeah.
Well, and the idea of co-creation is so powerful as opposed to, I think, how I grew up feeling about belonging.
Oh, yeah.
Belonging for me, I was very clear when I did or when I didn't. That's I think, true for a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But it was on me to fix.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It was like the machine is going to just keep doing what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me it wasn't even a sense of belonging. It was just like for me to belong, I had to change.
Yeah.
To work in that. And so, even a half a decade or a half a century in, the idea of co-creating spaces with other human beings is a really scary, amazing, powerful opportunity to think about what that is and how I'm impacted by your belonging and how you're impacted by my belonging in a space that we've made together. And this gets very, I know this starts to kind of go out there, but there's something very intriguing to me about redefining that for generations of folks who it has been a one-way street that you either did or you didn't, and it was on you to figure out how.
Yeah.
I think that's
yeah.
a culture war we're in right now.
Yeah.
Like ultimately.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right. It's that there are these like defined circles and everyone's trying to fit everyone in their circle.
Or not in their circle.
Right.
As the case may be.
Yeah, like get in or get out sort of thing.
Right.
But it feels to me like we're missing the opportunity for possibility.
Yeah.
Because we're sitting in this place of like, no, this is the circle and you have to do it this way. And so I'm curious about you sit in a little bit more of a nebulous space when you're in a consulting role with organizations.
Yeah.
And you're looking at their ebbs and flows and where there's safety and where there's not. What do you think the possibility is when people actually dive into asking themselves hard questions about belonging?
Well, I before I go there, I want to go to what you were sharing, Kristen, where it's, and this comes from John Powell's work. So on this, highly recommend some of his more recent books. He's contrasting what certainly I was kind of socialized growing up of like excluding to belong, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I belong here, these people don't belong, right? And so, right, and I think that kind of speaks to the
Yeah.
culture war piece. And what he argues is, can we build a world that's big enough for, rather than an us and a them, it's a you and a me and a we, right? And so how do we have this version of belonging where we don't need to exclude in order to make that space, that possibility of co-creation? So I think when I consult, I try to like shift the frame on that first and leave space, kind of more in a coaching capacity to put the question out there and see what comes up, to see where people are at first. And, how much do we limit ourselves even to begin with when we want to build spaces of belonging, right? And usually we don't get there until we talk about the psychological safety and the trust pieces, which are relatively easy to measure inside of an organization, of just seeing like, what is the level of psychological safety? Where does that exist? Looking at teams, looking at roles, like where kind of like, if it's a hierarchical organization, is there a higher sense of safety at the top? Middle management, kind of where kind of frontline workers. And that gets really interesting, right? Because people want to go to the belonging piece first, largely because of that detector of like, I feel it or I don't. And that's usually why people are gravitated to my work, because, that's a fundamental human need, right? So we all can relate to the concept. And then kind of bringing people back to like what's needed before we even can have that conversation. And that can be the trickier piece of kind of recognizing when we're in psychologically unsafe places, right? And that's sometimes hard to look at. And it takes a special leader to say, okay, like this is where we're at. Like, where do we need to go to improve where some departments or some aspects of our workforce is at, So that's kind of where I begin. But, but if I feel like there was another part of your question, so I want to.
Well, just what's possible when people, like, where does the possibility lie in it? Like when people start to think about their organizations, the sense of safety, the concerns that people have, the connections people have, where do you find the possibility?
I mean, teams become more cohesive, and the more cohesive a team is, the more creative it is. I think of like the folks who listen to the show, like imagine, right? Like if you knew your colleagues had your back, and you could take an interpersonal risk of sharing like an out of the box idea, right? Like in the fundraising world where it's like, wow, we've never thought about using text before. Like all of these ideas came from someone who had a high level of psychological safety. They had a high level of trust to share maybe a half-baked idea. I mean, you all probably see this all the time in the work you do. And it's like, wait, there's something to that.
Yeah.
And you add to it, and then I add to it. And that's the kind of co-creation in real time. You get better products, you get better services. People feel more connected, of like really engaged in the work. Like that's like dream team stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why I get excited by the work, because when it happens, when you're in an environment where you can start to see this kind of culture take root, it's like the sky is the limit. And I think in where we're at, in this moment in time, I mean, what possibility, pick a challenge, if we had dream teams like addressing those challenges, it's like, okay, I have hope. So I think that's the possibility, is the hope of what you can create together.
Well, I think you're tapping into also, in a capitalistic world that we live in, I think you're tapping into things like organizations thrive and, profits grow and businesses swell. But I'm curious about the individual impact too.
Yeah.
Where's the possibility for the individual?
Yeah. I know we're going to go into like the topic of loneliness and exclusion. So, but I would say, I'll leave that for when we get there. Maybe an example is for an individual, like in the moment in time that we're in, I'm someone who's trans, right? And I'm thinking of my home state of Florida, and if I was still there, I'm in Oregon. So yes, Oregon. I worked for a corporation that had a really strong protections, like for gender identity, for people who are trans, non-binary. That would be my sanctuary. If I knew I could show up, and it's not just basic protections. I knew if I could show up and people really valued like what I brought, like my lived experience, the expertise, like, who I am and how I'm like the presence that I bring. Wow, that gives me more hope in my actual living situation. Like when I leave work, when I leave that sanctuary and going home, it's like there's a place that I feel connected. I feel valued. I'm starting to feel those ingredients. I may not describe it as belonging. I definitely won't describe it as a family, right?
Yeah.
Yet it's a bright spot in my day. And so I think in some ways it can help us, get through these challenging times. If not, maybe find some joy, with where we're at.
Yeah. I think that's right. I'm like, yeah, we need more bright spots. And also I think about, when we look at the nonprofit sector and the size of the tent, when you're in mission-based work, it's the people within the organization, and then it's the folks who are, you're spending time with in your programs. It's the donors that are helping me. Like, I just look at, outside of the corporate architecture, which has its own sort of layers of impact, but when I think about nonprofits and their capacity to amplify that belonging within their organization over many intersections of people, where that organization is their intersection point. And it's so much more than just the staff who are there, day in, day out. It's all of those other pieces to that work. It becomes really powerful.
I'm immediately just thinking, to me, there's so many overlays of when you think about zooming in and zooming out. You can zoom in and see like an impact on mental health for an individual. You can zoom in and see the impact on quality of life for the individual, on health outcomes for the individual, on like goals and achievements for an individual. But then you can like zoom out and look at like broken systems that can be repaired through this work, through creating a sense of belonging by bringing multiple voices that feel a sense of psychological safety. So I feel like we're in just this like crazy influx moment, or like not influx, what's like inflection point moment, where we're about to sort of see the possibility of what we can do when we co-create.
Yeah.
But if we don't belong, it's really hard to co-create.
Exactly.
Right? So
exactly.
I feel like I find a lot of hope in your work, and I find a lot of inspiration in your work.
There's a mutual admiration because I love going to events that you all put on, because I'm like, oh, like this is where I feel connected, with some of the organizations you work with, and those spaces are so needed right now.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, let's take a short break. We're going to hear from one of our promotional partners, and when we come back, we'll dive further into the individual impacts.
Sweet.
Ready for your hard work to yield more funds at your next event? Join us at Elevate, a nonprofit fundraising event conference designed to bring our community together and make planning successful events easier. Register today for this hybrid conference on March 3rd and 4th, 2026 in Portland, Oregon, or join us online from anywhere. This isn't just another conference. You'll walk away with battle-tested strategies, hands-on tools, and proven templates that top fundraisers use to raise millions. Your mission deserves fully funded success. Register today at swaimstrategies.com.
Welcome back. We are here talking to Rhodes Perry about belonging and connection and all of the good that is possible as a result. Can you talk about the epidemic of loneliness and how you see it impacting people in the world?
Yeah. Well, I will speak to it from the workplace perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
So epidemic of loneliness kind of connects with exclusion. And so the frameworks that I look at in the workplace are exclusion and belonging. And so workplaces in general, like there is like an unchecked cost that most organizations are not looking out for, and it's the cost of exclusion. And in US businesses alone, this is from an Accenture study, and I was like, whoa. The annual price tag of exclusion is $1.05 trillion every year.
With
Wow.
a T.
Yeah, with a T.
Trillion.
Trillion. Yeah. And that's, I mean, even thinking of $1 billion is hard to
Yeah.
imagine, right? So it's a huge price tag, and it shows up in a couple of ways, right? So like the first piece is we're talking about culture, we're talking about team cohesion. Acts of exclusion that happen really erode that kind of team cohesion, and not surprisingly, it leads to disengagement, right? It's the opposite of what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
This kind of co-creation. We were talking a little bit about healthcare, right? If you think of employer-sponsored insurance, if you're a company that offers that, unchecked exclusion kind of increases those costs, right? Because there's an actual physical harm that's caused when you feel exclusion in the brain. Things like heart disease, stroke, anxiety, depression, right? And those are, from a purely business standpoint, right? Like that's going to increase your healthcare costs. And then there's this piece of burnout. I think we were talking about that also as well. Exclusion kind of contributes to burnout, and that is actually impacting senior leaders at a higher level. So a couple of years ago, like the leadership exodus, you're reading business journals and you're reading a lot about that. And I think that obviously contributes, especially where we're at now, where leaders, the old playbook, it's not working. Everything that I learned about leadership, like, why is it not working? Why can't I think my way through this? And that contributes to burnout as well. So there's some very significant costs, and I share that with you all. I definitely share it with clients that I work with, because it helps answer, like, why should we care about belonging? Isn't that a nice to have once we're successful? And it's like, it's a whole reframe. It's like the prerequisite for team success. It's the prerequisite for your business to succeed, industry breakthroughs. And so it's really, really important not to overlook that piece of the work, of how valuable culture is. And, the best organizations, I think, really keep an eye to it. And I think some of the workplaces that are struggling the most, it's just a mindset shift that needs to happen at the top. Yeah.
So in our work, we so frequently look to the gathering moment as a place of connection. And I immediately just started thinking about sort of isolation, working from home, not having just those like glances across the office, casual eye contact, interactions. How do you create a sense of belonging?
Yeah. I mean, it's everything from ritual, like team ritual, right? Like you can create it virtually. I've worked with organizations 100%, remote work. It's how you gather, right? Like it's how you put. I have a colleague, her name's Bernadette Smith, from the Equality Institute, love her. And in her writings, in what she talks about, she often says connection before content. Connection before content.
Yes.
If you're a team leader, right? Even if you're a colleague, like, really, just kind of checking in. How are things going? What's on your heart? I know sometimes these questions are pretty loaded these days, right? But really to have that heart-to-heart connection, or colleague to colleague, depending on the relationship, that's the start of it, is really to see the human behind kind of the individual contributor, the team, the department, is remembering at the end of the day that organizations are just made up of groups of people, right? And we have needs, including feeling that sense of belonging. And that's where I would start. There's lots of, there's a playbook to it, right? But it's don't forget the human part. No, don't forget the human part of being human. And, even in business environments that tend to be transactional, right? There's, if you think about your own relationships of your favorite clients, or, the people that you really love working with, like, why is that? It's probably not because, you had an exchange of like, I am investing in this and you will deliver this service. There's more to it. And usually there's probably trust and safety behind those feelings.
Yeah, I think that's so important. We, in our events, we're so frequently looking for ways to create that, like create a sense of trust and safety. Psychological safety is something we talk a lot about, right? The idea that you can come in and immediately feel welcomed, that there aren't barriers to feeling a part of something. Where do you see when people are coming together, virtually or in person,
Yeah.
what is the potential of bringing together people collaboratively versus the one-on-one, or you go do that on your own? Like, where do you see that being in community together kind of creates energy and momentum?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think with the work that you all do, these opportunities for humans to gather in the same, if that's possible, right? If people have the ability to be together, there is an energy, as you all know, that it's difficult to create virtually. I've seen it done, but it's not as instant. It's not as instant as feeling energy around you, of feeling of coming out of the worlds that we're in, which I have found in my own life after lockdown got much smaller, right?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of tiptoeing back out into this big world that we're in, and being with people, especially like if you're gathering in a nonprofit environment around an organization's mission or a movement's cause, right? Like there is this electricity because it's like, wow, I'm not alone, right? Like you too, you're on like team movement, whatever the movement is. It's like, yeah, okay. And I think I think that's medicine for these times because of this epidemic of loneliness that is creating, I think, a false sense of division, and certainly creating isolation that's very real. And the more that we can kind of bust out of that and create opportunities for people to feel a little less alone, that's magic. I think.
The antidote to
Absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
We've been personally looking a lot at the fact that, we're all in Portland, Oregon, a place that we frequently hear from people who don't live here, keep Portland weird, and Portland,
Yes.
But the thing that I love about Portland is Portland gathers really quickly. And there's a lot of innovation and creativity here about gathering.
Yeah.
We've just been noticing it in awe. I don't know if you've heard of Tabor Dance at all.
No.
Oh my gosh. It's a group that sprung up during COVID that they were looking for a way to like still socially engage, like go dancing, but in a safe way. So they created a gathering in a park where a DJ would show up in a park.
Yes.
And now this has like continued and has swelled to like every Wednesday citywide dance party.
I love that.
And that has then moved into, we have a protect our water effort that is happening to clean up the river that runs through the middle of Portland. The Human Access Project is working on that.
Yeah.
And now they've started doing something similar where they gather people around the water and have dance parties with DJs and entertainers that show up on the waterfront to get people to the waterfront using the water. And it's this like there is this natural proclivity in Portland to think about how do we get people together so we can move a goal forward.
Yeah.
And I think that we find a lot of hope in that as an antidote right now, as the medicine.
Yeah.
Because in that I can, we've been at Tabor Dance where we've seen some individual by themselves in the far corner of the park slowly come closer, slowly come closer, slowly come closer. And next thing you know, they're in the middle and they are like leading the dance party, and that sense of like, yes, connection is made.
Yeah.
We've been finding a lot of hope too in the bike bus. Do you know about this
I
group?
do know about,
Yes.
Anything bikes.
If you don't know about the bike bus, go follow the bike bus.
We will put it in the show notes.
We will put it in the show notes. But that sense of like youth going to school, getting on the bus, something that I actually remember as a kid, these horrible nightmares about thinking about the bus, right?
Yeah.
And this is a movement or an effort that is happening all around the country now, but started here in Portland around getting kids to gather together and ride their bikes together. And it turns into like a giant parade going to school. We have often been excited to just go cheer on the bike buses as they're heading to school and just cheer them on and have a great day at school. And it creates this like sense of we are going to go have a great day because we kicked off our day doing something that felt like we belonged. And that is just, you can see it. It's magic when it's happening.
Yes.
It is pure magic. So when you say that is the antidote, that is the healing, I'm like, exclamation point right there.
I love that. Yeah. And it's like it's the power, like it's something that when I moved to Oregon, I learned really quickly, and people would say this to me, Oregon is all about relationships. It's very relational, right? Like, and it's, and I, like intuitively I got it, right? And now after being here for about a decade, I'm like, oh yes. And I think it's a superpower here. And it's, it's not coincidental, right? That like things like the bike bus start here,
right?
And other people are like, wait, that's a great idea, So, there's a lot to be learned, certainly here, and I think there's many other examples of like, how do people create that kind of sometimes it feels elusive, like this elusive sense of belonging, this emotional outcome, and those are great examples. Yeah.
Is there a way to, I'm thinking of, our nonprofit friends who are gathering folks. Is there a way to read, or what's a feedback loop look like for someone that there is a sense of belonging happening at their gathering?
Or even among their team.
Or among their,
or their
like,
board meeting.
I'm wondering, like we've kind of moved into this discussion about folks who are willing to engage in this conversation within their organizations about belonging and how to cultivate that and co-create spaces where that can be achieved. I'm wondering what some of the cues are that that's not happening to get them to even think of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my brain went to a survey. I was like, oh, but yeah,
surveys can be helpful.
Which is
they
also,
can.
yeah,
they can. Yeah. I mean, I think one is like the feedback loop of like, did people feel it, right? Like I think maybe for the event or the organization is knowing your people, right? Like knowing like your audience and maybe connecting with like as like a focus group, but a small group of people around, we're thinking about doing this event, and we really want to generate to evoke the feelings of belonging, to be clear of like, we want you to feel seen. We want you to feel a sense of trust. Like, what does that look like for you? Instead of like, and this is just me as an entrepreneur, don't guess what like your clients need, ask them, right?
Yes.
It's like ask, don't make something up and then crickets follow because nobody wants that offer because you didn't ask them, right? So I think there's something to that. And of course, like these organizations are, they're often having conversations with the people that they're serving. I think I would start there, and then you have some measure of like what success would be like, and then to circle back, and maybe it's through a survey, an event survey or something like that. But like, these are some of the things that people expressed that they wanted, on a scale of 1 to 5, like how well did we meet that, and you're learning, right? Because if you are truly co-creating something together, there will be different constellations of people at the beginning of the year, towards the end of the year, and 5 years from now, right? And so things shift and evolve. And we definitely know that now. What once worked 3 months ago is definitely not going to work now. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, these are just really dynamic times. They're incomprehensible. Things are breaking, it can be brittle, right? So there has to be an openness of testing and changing, I guess. Yeah.
When we talked prior to the recording today, you had phrased, this is who we are and this is how we are together. Can you talk about that idea?
Oh, yeah. And I think this is great for your audience, right? Like nonprofits, like, you all have missions, I hope, and like a vision for the future, but it's like, it's more about the identity of a group, right? Like, this is who we are. Like, this is what we stand, and I think like you're thinking about folks that listen to the show or trying to create dynamic events. So how do you infuse that throughout an event so people remember of like, oh yeah, this is what this organization is about, or this is what this movement's about. And like, this is who we are and this is how we are together, is really taking those values, hopefully you've done them, right? And like, what do they look like in action, especially in moments like these where we are being tested? If values were easy, then we would just be like, okay, this is what we do, in times of conflict or in times of being challenged, right? And so I think going back to like, who are we now in this moment? Or maybe like, who do we need to be in this moment? Because maybe we need to show up differently. And, based on who you need to be or who you need to become, how do you put those values into action? Like, and hopefully, values are your values. Like, hopefully they don't change, right? But in this context, like, what does it look like to really act and move in alignment with those values? Like, that's kind of, those are the statements I usually say, before facilitating, like a strategic planning session with an organization is like, how do you describe it, like without looking at your website, and what are the actions that kind of align behind this identity?
It's interesting. As you were framing that, I had a sort of realization that examining that question, asking that question regularly in this dynamic time we're in, to your point of like how fast things are changing. You mentioned how fast things, like how brittle things are and how fast things are breaking. I also see things are rebuilding very quickly. And it would be interesting to ask that question regularly, because who are we and who are we together in this moment, in this time, in this situation is changing really quickly.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the organizations we work with that are really thriving right now and are like leading the way and showing up, I think are maybe inherently asking that question. I've seen organizations who their mission and values are clear, therefore they can answer that question without changing the mission and values, right? And even though a lot of things around them may be changing, they're able to continue operating with clarity and address what needs to change because the world around us has changed.
Yes.
And that, like, what's the word? Like flexibility, that ability to respond quickly. I hate to use this word because it's been so overused, but to pivot, that opportunity to sort of be right place, right time means that you are asking that question regularly.
Yes. That's a really, organizationally, and I think even individually, like, who do you need to be today, right? Like, and it's the being. It's not like what you need to be doing. What state do you need to be in today to be responsive to the moment, to the times that we're in. And the really great thing about that question is it's like, it's present tense, right? So like whoever you were, right? Like it's just like, it's like a daily contract. You get to renew it every day, right? So it's like individually you can do that, organizationally, like gathering with your team, you could do that as well. And that creates a lot of possibilities too, right? Because we don't have to do the same thing that we've always done. Yet we can still be clear, like we can be consistent with this is what we're about, our mission, and this is how we go about it, our values and like how that guides our actions. And I think to that point on clarity, that could build a lot of confidence in these moments where, there isn't something prescriptive to be successful in these times, right? Yet some of those open-ended questions can kind of hopefully provoke some thoughts and fill in the blanks. Yeah.
I think of our own like entrepreneurial experience, and the times that we've thrived is when we have been asking that, and the times when we've really struggled is when we haven't been asking that. So for me, it's a real awareness of continually evaluating that versus staying static.
Yes.
When everything else around you is moving a different direction or changing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and what's interesting too, I'm thinking about the clarity of values, and when there are multiple versions of what those values are, and there isn't a clarity. I don't know that I have a specific question. I'm just having, I'm kind of having that moment of like that tilt is likely at the base of a lot of the inability to co-create, the inability to feel like you belong, because there isn't actually a unifying idea of what we're all in this for.
Mm-hmm.
This being organization or business or,
Right.
like
Yeah.
not the more existential, that's a whole other discussion, but,
What are we doing
but also
here?
comes into
Yeah.
this. But I'm just thinking about, when you were talking about a leader who's super clear on this and can flex to be able to meet all of these moments because they are so grounded in where the decisions are coming from and what they're looking to support and protect, including people.
Yeah.
And so when that isn't clear or that's a moving line, and I'm saying this mostly to folks who may identify with occupying those spaces right now,
Yeah.
because I do feel like for our nonprofit friends, there are really big external factors that are moving lines.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even on something as sort of nuts and bolts as funding and grants and this and that and the other, that without that unifying vision sort of holding us all together so that we can face all of these things, those become more disruptive potentially. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I can see
Yeah.
it's almost like as we were talking about belonging, right? Like that kind of subjective way, like I'm going to talk about it different than you and you, right? Like yet there's some objective qualities to it. I think the clarity, if an organization is struggling with that, it's an opportunity like wait a minute. Like let's go back to basics to make sure that when we're describing this, value of integrity or whatever the value is, right? That I'm not using my personal definition and Sam's not using hers. We were clear, like, this is what it means to the organization. And obviously, like, there's going to be different things coming our way, but there's an organizational approach to what that is. And I think like that might be able to address some of that struggle. And I see that. I mean, I see that within diversity, equity, and inclusion work where people are using radically different definitions for just those 3 words.
Yep.
And that usually is like, hang on a second. Let's be really, really clear what we mean by this before we do anything else, right? So it's kind of going back to those foundations.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you talked with us before the call about evoking a feeling, and that's the sauce.
Oh, yeah.
We think that too. I mean, we wholeheartedly agree with you, but I want you to define that and explain that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably in the context of talking about somatics, and it's again, it's like going there, being willing to go there to kind of notice what's showing up, and using that as kind of an anchor of like, where am I at? Am I totally in a reactive state right now? Or am I in a state where I can be with like, especially if it's a challenging feeling, like how can this be a guide right now to more choice rather than doing the same thing that I've always done that might feel really good in the moment if I'm reactive, right? But maybe 3 days from now, I look back on a conversation or a behavior that I did and it's like, oh God, now I have to do some repair work, right? So like that's to me is like kind of the secret sauce is if we could just slow down just a little bit to find our ground, and especially for leaders, like if we're not really sure what to do in the moment, it's okay to pause. It's okay to say, I don't know, It's okay to lean on a team that hopefully you've assembled that is like a team of advisors that can also, you can lean on them to kind of co-create a response in a moment. And there's more than 2 options, like that's kind of where I go. But I'm kind of curious, like from your perspectives.
Well, when we're fundraising, I mean, I think so often we think feelings are, sort of like a small bucket of like happy, sad, joyful, depressed. Like we think feelings are a small bucket, but there's, over 300 feelings that the human experience weaves together. And when we're able to evoke a feeling through storytelling, through conversation, through vulnerability, through, feeling that sense of like, I can actually risk this in this moment. We're able to see more cohesive teams. We're able to see increase in fundraising because the donor feels that.
Yeah.
We're able to then see events have an increase of revenue and support, but also this like building of a movement can happen because people had a feeling. And that feeling, it can be widespread, right?
Yeah.
That feeling can be, I had a sense of nostalgia, or I had a sense of humility. And those are all things that still can be very effective tools to creating a connection in a real human moment.
Yeah.
And so to me, that like the secret sauce of is evoking a feeling is yes, grounding and understanding and being in relationship to where we are in the moment versus being reactionary. But it's also like the door of being real together that then creates something bigger upon itself. And that exists, I think, in storytelling. It exists in how we talk to each other, talk to donors. I mean, I hear so often from people that post-COVID, a lot of people are struggling with friendship and how to find friends and how to connect in this world where we're not going to an office every day and we don't have built-in infrastructure. And all of those, I think, keep coming back to, we're missing that moment to experience feeling together.
Yes. Yeah. And that's like heart to heart. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the, I love what you're saying, because I feel like when I talk about belonging, it's the language of the heart. And that's the language of the heart is communicated through emotions. Right. And these are, whether it's 300, I don't know where we're at, like with the number of feelings, like these are access points to be able to relate, right? Because if we kind of drop into the wisdom of the tissues, it's all there, right? And like you might be able to share a story, right? And it may not be my story, but there's glimmers of it where like there's an emotional tone to it where it's like, I feel that, right? And then that opens up the possibility of like, I can see myself in your story, and maybe that kind of like brings me a little bit closer, like the dance party you were talking about, of like, oh, people are dancing. Maybe I'll go a little bit closer until you're in it, and all of a sudden you're relating. And, that's the start of a relationship, of a friendship or a colleagueship or whatever that looks like.
To me, it's the way too that we see like that divide get bridged. So in our sector, we're so often looking at a service to solve a problem, right? To solve a need. Maybe not a problem, but a need in the community.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a problem, but not always. And in the sort of other side of the coin, we often have the contributing supporters that are providing financial support who may not have ever actually had an experience with that need.
Yeah.
So, for example,
Yep.
I may not have ever experienced houselessness, but hearing someone's story of their experience allows me to feel that.
Oh yeah.
To feel that sense of connection. And I don't know, there's a big picture to me that I keep thinking we wouldn't be in an environment where globally we're in this divide of us, them, and systems are crumbling and we're being asked to not belong if it wasn't so important.
Yes.
Right? If it wasn't the secret sauce.
Yes.
If it wasn't the thing that
is the sauce.
created power.
Yeah.
I mean, power is the like dynamic we're all fighting for, right? That I feel like when even like the sweetest, kindest 4-year-old child feels a sense of belonging, they can have an impact on the crowd they're in, the people they're around, that you don't have to be powerful. But when you have a sense of belonging, you bring power into space and create power around you.
I love that.
So it feels to us like the most important thing right now that we should be thinking about and co-creating together.
It's true. And also, it's not pie.
It's not pie. We can all have it.
Yes.
We're not splitting it. Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to step into the fundraising elevator with Rhodes Perry.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.
Welcome back. We're here with Rhodes Perry, who's going to join us in the actual fundraising elevator where we're all headed up. Rhodes, what is that parting tip, piece of wisdom you would offer our fundraisers out there so that they can continue heading up?
Be the butterfly.
Ooh.
And what I mean by that is if you ever watch butterflies flying in a meadow, they do this thing where they kind of lift each other up. Right?
Oh.
And so I think in this moment that we're in, we want to build more connection. We want to build more safety, more trust. Just imagine being the butterfly, right? And what are ways that you can show up when you have the energy to maybe lift up your colleagues, sharing new ideas on how to get people engaged and to support causes that they believe in. And can you be vulnerable enough to ask for some support when you need to be lifted up? So that's where I will, as the doors are closing.
Be the butterfly.
Be the butterfly.
Butterfly.
Yeah.
I love it.
I love it. Well, I feel like the work you do is deep, important work with organizations, with businesses, with leaders. If people feel a sense of, or a gap in their organization, a sense of that there isn't belonging, how do they get a hold of you? How do they work with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, the easiest place is just rhodesperry.com. There's a contact button, I promise. We will be very, very responsive and would love to be able to support. Yeah.
Excellent. So belonging at work and imagine belonging.
Yes.
Both of those, where can we find them?
The website.
Any
Yes.
and any bookstores?
Any bookstores, online, I would recommend going to the site if you don't want to go to Amazon, but it is on Amazon, as well as a couple of the independent bookstores. So
Great.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Reading for all of us.
Reading and Rhodes Less Traveled memoir methodology book coming out, I think June of 2026. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep our eyes
Trying
out
to
for
meet
it.
the deadline. Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. We appreciate you being here. And hopefully we've inspired everyone to think a little bit about belonging.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Hey y'all, it's Kristen. Before we leave, I want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, and subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, share it with a friend. Leave us a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thanks so much for being here and tuning in.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the Fundraising Elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your programming and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at swaimstrategies.com. You can also find the link in our show notes.